April the 14th, 1865. The laughter of a packed theater echoes through Washington, D.C. A man in a black overcoat slips into the presidential box. A single gunshot cracks the air. Abraham Lincoln slumps forward, his wife Mary screaming beside him. The Civil War is over, but the battle for America's soul has just begun. He was born in a dirt-floored cabin, with no fortune, no formal education, and no connections. Yet Abraham Lincoln would become the man who stitched the Union back together, and paid for it with his life. His story is not one of myth, but of grit. The self-taught lawyer who outwitted political giants, a grieving father who carried a nation's sorrow, and a leader who dared to redefine freedom itself. Tonight, we trace the journey of a man who stared into the abyss of civil war and refused to blink, who wielded words as his weapon, declaring emancipation not just for slaves, but for America's conscience. But beneath the iconic top hat and stoic gaze lay contradictions: a president accused of tyranny, a husband haunted by loss, a mortal man immortalized by tragedy. This is not the tale of a statue. This is Lincoln, the strategist, the survivor, the unfinished promise of a nation. Let's begin where he did, in the shadows of a frontier forest, where the future is written by those bold enough to seize it. In the winter of 1809, a cry pierced the silence of a one-room Kentucky cabin. The boy born there had no silver spoon, only splinters. His mother, Nancy Hanks Lincoln, called him Abraham, a name meaning father of multitudes. But survival, not legacy, was the family's creed. By age 9, Abraham would lose her to poisoned milk, a tragedy that carved resilience into his bones. His father, Thomas Lincoln, remarried, but young Abe clashed with him, a pragmatic man who saw books as frivolous. Yet Abraham defied him, walking miles to borrow a battered copy of Aesop's Fables, or The Life of Washington. At night, he scratched arithmetic onto shovel blades by firelight. "I'm slow to learn," he once said, "but I never forget." By his teens, he was a rail splitter, a towering figure swinging an axe from dawn to dusk. But his hands blistered for more than wages. At 19, he pulled a flatboat down the Mississippi to New Orleans. There, he witnessed slaverous brutality firsthand: men in chains, families torn apart. It haunted him. Years later, he'd confess, the sight was a continual torment. This was Lincoln's forge, a childhood of loss, labor, and relentless curiosity. The backwoods boy who'd one day wield the Constitution like an axe to cut down the oldest evil on American soil. By 1837, Lincoln stood in an Illinois courtroom, a self-taught lawyer with frayed sleeves and a razor-sharp mind. Honest Abe became legend. He once walked miles to return pennies he'd overcharged a client, but the courtroom was his training ground for a greater stage: politics. Marrying sharp-witted Mary Todd in 1842, he gained a partner as ambitious as himself. Yet grief stalked them, two sons lost to illness. Lincoln buried sorrow in work, rising from state legislator to congressman. But slavery's shadow consumed him. If slavery isn't wrong, he declared, nothing is wrong. In 1858, he challenged Senator Stephen Douglas, clashing over slaverous expansion. "A house divided cannot stand," Lincoln thundered. Though he lost the Senate race, his words electrified the nation. The backwoods lawyer was now a titan of moral conviction, and America was listening. November 1860. A political earthquake. Lincoln, the Black Republican, wins the presidency. Southern states secede before his inauguration. By April 1861, Confederate cannons blast Fort Sumter. America is at war with itself. Lincoln, the novice commander-in-chief, faced catastrophe. Early Union defeats, political snakes in Congress, a grieving father burying son Willie in 1862. Yet he pressed forward, drafting Emancipation, not just to free slaves, but to shatter the South's backbone. January the 1st, 1863, all persons held as slaves shall be free. A moral gambit. Gettysburg's carnage followed, but his 272-word address redefined democracy's purpose. By 1865, Lee surrendered. Lincoln, gaunt and weary, urged reconciliation, with malice toward none. But fate had other plans. April the 9th, 1865, the war-weary South surrenders at Appomattox. Lincoln, his face etched with for years of grief, urges mercy, let em up easy. But 5 days later, as laughter filled Ford's theater, a vengeful actor's bullet found its mark. The great emancipator died at dawn, his dream of reconciliation hanging in the balance. The nation unraveled. Mourners lined railway tracks for 1,700 miles as Lincoln's funeral train crept home to Illinois. A freedwoman wept, "We have lost our Moses." Yet his words outlived him. The 13th Amendment, ratified months after his death, struck slaver's chains for good. His vision, a new birth of freedom, echoed through Reconstruction, even as America faltered. Today, Lincoln's contradictions define him: the Union saver accused of dictatorship, the emancipator criticized for caution, yet his humanity is his legacy, a reminder that progress is forged by imperfect leaders. From Martin Luther King Jr.'s marches to modern battles for justice, Lincoln's question lingers: what constitutes the bulwark of our liberty? He was not a saint, but a mirror. In his triumphs and flaws, we see our own capacity to bend history toward hope. Abraham Lincoln remains, as he called himself, the humble instrument of a greater cause.